Welcome to the broadcast. First up, Fox analyst Jim Hammer on San Francisco's culture of crime.
They're afraid to let their kids onto the street at night. Think about that. If you lived in a neighborhood where your 15-year-old couldn't walk on the street, that's intolerable.
Then San Francisco's newest port commissioner on the long and difficult road ahead for the city's waterfront.
An estimate of how much it would take to bring all the piers just up to par. And it's $1.4 billion that we need to bring those up.
Jim Hammer and Rodney Fong next. We welcome back Jim Hammer, who's a former prosecutor in the Bay Area in 3 different counties and a frequent legal analyst for Fox News. And I have been concerned about crime in San Francisco. I wrote an article that I know that you read, but more importantly, you see it from a much bigger picture. Crime in the Bay Area, crime in the country, and you were a top-notch prosecutor. Okay, what do you think's going on here, especially in San Francisco? Where do you start tackling the problem and finding a real solution to growing violent crime?
I mean, there's a long-term solution and short-term solutions, I think. And once you've been in the criminal court system for a while, you see that primarily both the victims of crimes and the perpetrator come from cycles of poverty. So the long-term, I think, solution deals with giving people better choices than committing crime, especially young people. But what do we do tomorrow? People in many parts of San Francisco especially are terrified to walk down the street right now, while other parts have greater wealth than they've ever had in San Francisco. And that's, as a third-generation San Franciscan, that's, I think, a horrible crime that's going on in San Francisco.
There was a terrible situation going on in the Marina and some of our better neighborhoods now, though.
Well, see, it's bleeding over, but if you had been in the Bayview or the Western Addition, where a lot of people live, over the last couple of years, they've been experienced every day what the Marina felt one weekend. The chronicle of this series, called Revolving Door Justice, highlighting in just one weekend how both a number of the perpetrators of murders and attempted homicides and some of the victims all have been in and out of the system over and over again. Arrested, let go. Arrested, let go. Arrested, let go. And so
what happened to 3 strikes?
Well, that's only if you have violent felonies and serious felonies in the background. We're talking about other felons, though, who get picked up by the police and let go. And I'm not here to blame any one person. All I know is the system fails, whether it's the judges or the DA's office, or not putting a case together, and people walk out and they commit a crime. Today's newspaper, another story, recently freed felon, so this is this week, in the last week of July, recently freed felon accused in killing. A couple of days after he gets out, he was a prior felon, committed a new crime, gets out, commits a murder in San Francisco. So it's part of the solution is focused enforcement. Today, that is, picking out...
Focused enforcement.
If you went to any police captain in any of the district stations in San Francisco and said, who are the 20 worst guys in this neighborhood? Who's responsible for the drug dealing, the petty crime, the stuff that makes these neighborhoods intolerable? They could tell you right away who they are. And if you put some resources into building solid cases against them, which could be proved in a court of law, and then the DA put resources into those 20 people, you could really make a dramatic impact in those neighborhoods. That's a short-term solution. Again, the long-term solution is giving some hope and opportunity, especially in the poorest neighborhoods in San Francisco.
Why is it that at a recent hearing of the police commission, when the police chief was asked about what can you do, the chief, of course, used your first solution, more social programs, better housing. It's a litany. I appreciate it. But that's not what's going on here. That's why you have a more immediate solution. They claimed it was narcotics that's causing a great deal of the crime in San Francisco, especially in the Western Addition and the Tenderloin. So you're telling me they know? Well, they know who the high-profile criminals are in their districts, their police districts?
If you went to any sergeant or any police captain in any of these district stations, the men and women who work on the streets of San Francisco, they could name for you right now the top 10 drug dealers in those neighborhoods. So rather than focusing on everybody, Art, if you focus on those worst actors,
down those...
Exactly, and build solid cases through undercover buys or whatever else, so that you take them off the street, and then a judge holds them in jail. That then begins to build some confidence both in the police that something's going to be done, but most importantly in the people in those neighborhoods that the next morning they can walk their kid to school and not be afraid of a drug dealer on the corner. So it's a start.
Would that mean that the district attorney has the responsibility here for not carrying out those kinds of focused cases?
Again, listen,
is that where you do? Is that where it originates? How's that?
It's got to be in a partnership. Listen, if the police do a terrific job, the DA won't prosecute, it falls apart. If the DAs want to do it, but they say there's a bad case, they can't do it. So it's the DA together with the police at the very beginning of the operation, not after the arrest, sitting down and identifying these people and building cases. And I have to applaud the DA on one thing. Recently, the DA's office opened a satellite office in the Bayview, Hunters Point neighborhood. I advocated that a couple of years ago. If done correctly, especially in the most high-crime neighborhoods, a DA on the ground, full-time, getting to know the local merchants, the local people, and the local cops in the neighborhood, together can identify who those people are, and then before the arrest is even made, put together a solid case. And again, in a short period of time, Art, you can make a real difference on the streets.
How would you reply to Teresa Sparks, the head of the San Francisco Police Commission, saying that the other third leg in this is juries in San Francisco don't convict because they're San Franciscans and they have a compassionate heart?
Well, listen, I've been a prosecutor in Alameda.
Yes, and you've been a prosecutor here.
Santa Clara and San Francisco. San Francisco is probably the toughest place for prosecutors.
Why?
You can't get 12 San Franciscans to agree on what the best cup of coffee is. I mean, think about, let alone deciding if somebody committed a crime. I mean, this is a very diverse city. It's why I love San Francisco.
Why does diversity lead to the inability of a jury to make a decision based on the facts?
People pride themselves on their independence in San Francisco, and you get a jury into a jury room, 12 strangers with 12 different sets of very different life experiences, and sometimes, especially in San Francisco, they have a hard time coming with the unanimous verdict. Picking a jury is the most important part of a trial so that you get 12 people who can, and really good prosecutors, get better at that. So listen, it is harder here, but it's not impossible in San Francisco to get a conviction.
If we did take your recommendation about these focused cases, hardcore criminals that would send a message to the streets, do you think a San Francisco jury would by nature be able to make a decision, or there would be still this craziness in the jury system that would allow these people to get off despite the evidence?
No. Listen, if you build solid cases, San Francisco juries aren't insane. They're a little bit tougher. They'll convict cases. By the way, this isn't my idea. San Francisco commissioned a study to look at the problem of crime in San Francisco. This Harvard professor, Anthony Braga, issued a report saying 83% of the killers in 2004, 2005 had criminal records. I mean, it's a narrow group of people responsible for most of the crime. He developed this idea of focused enforcement, saying you can really make a difference if you go after parolees who are reviolating. You don't send them back on the street, you send them back to prison for some length of time. And again, on the most dangerous, the most violent, the most active drug dealers in these neighborhoods. But it's only a piece of the solution.
What about when you look at the Bay Area, other cities like San Jose and Oakland? Are they seeing an increase in crime, violent crime, or is the city of San Francisco experiencing something of an anomaly compared to other major cities?
Other large cities in the last year or two have seen an uptick in violent crime and in homicides. San Francisco, and you wrote about this recently in a piece, has seen an even bigger increase in violent crime. Robberies, I think you wrote about, were up 22% last year or the year before. That's a huge increase. That's
Why?
hundreds and hundreds and
Why
hundreds
is this
more robbery victims.
Besides these hardcore criminals, why is this happening? I mean, is it? I keep looking for the solution of I'd like to see where the responsibility lies. We're talking here now about violent crime, 4 categories of violent crime, but there are other categories of crime. And so you can truly ask, okay, there's something pervasive that makes the criminals on the streets know that the streets belong to them and not the police or the people who pay for these streets.
There's a domino effect. A successful prosecution or taking 5 bad people off the streets sends a message, and the next day I think people are less emboldened to commit crime. The opposite's true too. And this series the Chronicle wrote about, the revolving door justice, when you let 5 of them go, that sends the message when they're back on the streets, even if I get arrested, I get let go. A quick example of this effect, I'm representing, along with the Gonzalez-Lay law firm where I'm working now doing mostly civil rights work, 3 women who were students at De Anza College who walked in and saw a woman being raped, looked through a window, they banged, they finally got inside, she was comatose, unconscious, vomit all over her, took her to the hospital. 2 months later, the Santa Clara DA filed no charges. Right now, the Attorney General's office is taking a second look at that. Now, I wasn't there that night, but I've spent today and yesterday with those witnesses. I'm overwhelmingly convinced they saw a rape. What message in that kind of case, as an example, does it send to other women when they see a case with 3 witnesses not being prosecuted? The next woman says, I'm not going forward. What, to be humiliated, embarrassed, and then said something bad happened, but I'm not going to prosecute the case?
What is the reply of the Santa Clara, I guess it's prosecutor?
The Santa Clara DA said,
Yeah, he says what?
Something bad happened in that room, but there's not enough evidence, and I don't want to put the victim through it. The victim says, I want to go through it. I want my day in court. And hopefully the Attorney General's office is going to have a different conclusion when they look at the evidence.
So you have these stories like the one you just described today, and there was another. There are many stories. In fact, I'm surprised, but I'm not going to be surprised by more really random violence by very dangerous people to total strangers on the streets of San Francisco and Oakland and elsewhere. I mean, it's just a time bomb, as more of these crazy minds believe that there's nothing to stop them from doing what they want to do.
And what the Marina just experienced a week and a half ago, again, if you talk to people in these other really crime-impacted neighborhoods, experience art every single day. They're afraid to let their kids onto the street at night. Think about that. If you lived in a neighborhood where your 15-year-old couldn't walk on the street, that's intolerable. What's depressing to me is that more people aren't up in arms about it in San Francisco, and that we're not coming together.
Explain that to me.
I don't know. I'm third generation. My parents grew up here. My grandfather lived here. I know people from all parts of San Francisco, and I talk to people from a friend who's a very close friend of her child, a 16-year-old, was gunned down in the baby. Perfect student, perfect ambitions for her life, just murdered out of the blue. People there know this very intimately. In other parts of San Francisco, we have greater wealth than we've ever had, and it's depressing that people are cut off from other parts of the city and less connected to and less concerned about it. And
but it affects now all neighborhoods, just like the streets.
Because now the Marina had a bad weekend. Other neighborhoods have it all the time.
Right.
Go to the Western Addition.
Street thugs now know the streets are theirs, but the average citizen also knows the streets are not theirs.
I think it's starting to spill over. And if you let this go unabated long enough, guess what? Then this gang warfare from this neighborhood is on Market Street. There was a shooting 2 weeks ago on Market Street.
That's what I'm saying. I do not understand when the people, I know you've been passionate about this, and you know that I've been trying through this program else to wake people up. I've never seen a group of people from whatever neighborhood so quiet and so resigned to accept this as being just the way it is.
Well, I'm outraged by it. I know other people are.
You've written about it.
Again, to give out some credit as well, I know since I first started speaking up, I know the mayor's office has pushed to add extra police academy classes. That's a good move. They've actually added incentives to bring in lateral hires. That's something I've encouraged, and hopefully they're going to bring more cops. It's not the final solution. The final solution is giving people hope in their lives and some other opportunities. But you can have a whole
set of troops. You can have troops in the field. It comes down to the leadership of those troops. They can be a fighting force, and they can be a total disaster, as we're starting to see in Iraq, by the way. I mean, it really depends on where you go. So you're going to have 5 new classes. The buck must lie somewhere. And I do not understand why the electorate have not demanded something to happen. I think
because most of that crime has been centered in a couple of poor parts of San Francisco, that it hasn't touched people as much in their daily lives. But I think especially in the last year, it's spilling out in every neighborhood, and more people are starting to see what's going on.
I hope they use your concept of this focus cases. That's a very interesting concept. You wrote about that already once.
I did, but again, somebody else did this state. Actually, when I was a prosecutor in San Francisco, worked with this federal task force with federal agents together with San Francisco police and San Francisco prosecutors, and I helped supervise a couple of these operations. Would again identify who are the bad guys in this neighborhood, who's making it intolerable for people living there. And then the next day you'd go in when they were off the streets, and we got high bail set in those cases, and they'd say, wow, there's a difference. If you do that in a sustained way, together with bringing hope to people in those neighborhoods, you really can turn this around.
All right, Jim Hammer, I hope someone's listening.
Nice talking to you, Art.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.